There is a gap. It's tiny. Most people never notice it exists. It sits between the moment a craving appears and the moment you act on it. And in that gap, that thin sliver of time, your entire life is being decided. Not in the big moments, not on the days you feel strong and disciplined and clear. It's decided right there, in the half-second when the urge arrives and you reach for your phone, or the drink, or the food you swore you were done with. You've felt this. You make a decision in the morning, a clean, confident decision. Today, I won't. And by 9 at night, the decision is gone, and you can't even remember choosing to break it. That's the part that haunts people. Not the failure itself, but the strange absence of a moment where you chose. It feels like the failure happened to you, like something else took the wheel. Here is what almost no one understands. You are not weak. Your willpower is not broken. The problem is that you are trying to win a war at the wrong moment. You're trying to resist the craving at its peak, when it's loudest, strongest, most certain. And at its peak, you will lose every time, because by then the decision has already been made, somewhere beneath your awareness. The high performers, the people who seem to have an unshakable grip on themselves, they're not fighting harder than you. They're fighting earlier. They've learned to find the gap, to step inside it, and to hold it open for 4 seconds. 4 seconds is enough. It's almost absurd how little it takes. But those 4 seconds are the difference between the person who runs their life and the person whose life runs them. Let me show you exactly what happens inside them, and why this one pause beats any craving you'll ever face. Start with the thing everyone gets wrong. You've been told the craving is the enemy, that if you could just want it less, feel it less, you'd be free. So you wait. You wait to stop wanting the thing before you stop doing it. And the wait never ends, because that's not how desire works. The Stoics had a precise word for what's happening inside you. They called it epithumia, an appetite that has slipped its leash. Not desire itself, which is natural and even useful, but desire that has grown larger than its object. The pull toward the second drink that has nothing to do with thirst. The reach for the phone that has nothing to do with anything you actually want to see. Epictetus, who spent the first part of his life as a slave and the rest as one of the clearest minds Rome ever produced, understood that you do not control whether the appetite appears. The craving arrives on its own schedule. It is not an invitation, and it is not a command. It is just a sensation, a wave of wanting that rises in the body. Here is the part that changes everything. The craving is not the action. There is a space between them. We collapse them together. We feel the urge, and we assume the urge is already the doing, that the wanting has already decided the outcome. But it hasn't. The urge is whether. The action is a choice. And between the whether and the choice, there is a gap where you still live, where you are still the one in charge. If you can get there before the storm convinces you that you aren't. The entrepreneur who checks their phone 200 times a day is not a weak person. They are a person who has never once inspected the gap. The urge fires, the hand moves, and the entire transaction completes below the level of thought. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events, and that realizing this is where strength comes from. Most people read that as being about big, external misfortunes. But the most useful place to apply it is the smallest one, the craving you're having right now. You cannot stop it from arriving. You have complete power over what you do in the 4 seconds after it does. Now let's talk about why your usual strategy fails, because understanding the mechanism is the whole game. When a craving rises, it doesn't rise gently. It spikes. There's a curve to it, and at the top of that curve, your thinking changes. Blood and attention move toward the impulse. The part of your brain that plans and weighs consequences goes quiet. The part that wants the immediate reward gets loud. This isn't a character flaw. It's architecture. You were built this way for a world where immediate rewards meant survival. The problem is that you're now trying to negotiate with a system that was designed to override negotiation. And here is the trap most people fall into. They try to fight at the peak. They feel the craving climb, they wait until it's screaming, and then they summon their willpower and try to muscle through. Sometimes they win. Usually they don't. And every time they lose, something worse happens than just the lapse itself. The loop reinforces. This is the mechanism that keeps people stuck for years. Every time you feel the urge and then give in, you are teaching your nervous system a lesson. You're telling it. When this sensation appears, relief follows. The pathway gets stronger. The next craving arrives faster, hits harder, and feels more inevitable. You are, without meaning to, training the very thing that's defeating you. People think their bad habit is getting worse because they're getting weaker. It's the opposite. They're getting more skilled at the wrong skill. Every surrender is a repetition, and repetition is how you build anything, including a cage. But the loop runs in both directions. That's the part nobody tells you. The same mechanism that strengthens the craving when you give in will weaken it when you don't. Each time the urge rises and is not followed by the reward, the pathway loses a little voltage. The brain updates its prediction. The signal that used to mean relief is coming now means nothing reliably follows. And a craving that predicts nothing slowly stops shouting. This is why willpower at the peak is the wrong tool. It's not that willpower is useless. It's that you're spending it at the most expensive possible moment, when the odds are stacked against you and the cost is highest. You don't need more willpower. You need better timing. You need to intervene before the curve reaches the top, in the small window when the craving has appeared but hasn't yet taken the wheel. That window is the 4-second pause. And once you understand what's happening on the curve, you can see exactly why 4 seconds is enough to break it. So here's the method. It is almost insultingly simple, which is precisely why it works and why people dismiss it. When the craving appears, the moment you notice the pull, you do one thing. You pause for 4 seconds before you do anything at all. Not forever. Not until the craving disappears. 4 seconds. And in those 4 seconds, you do not fight the urge. This is the part people get wrong even when they try the technique. You're not clenching your jaw and white-knuckling through a battle. Fighting the craving feeds it attention, and attention is fuel. Instead, you do the opposite. You observe it. You turn toward the sensation with a kind of cold curiosity, and you name what's happening. There it is. The urge. Rising. You let it be exactly as strong as it is. You make no attempt to push it down. Why 4 seconds? And why does this break the loop? Because the pause does 3 things at once. First, it reinserts you into the gap. The whole reason cravings win is that the urge and the action have fused into a single automatic motion. The pause pries them apart. It restores the space between stimulus and response. And in that space, as Epictetus understood, lives every freedom you have. Second, the 4 seconds outlast the spike. The peak of a craving is shorter than you think. It feels permanent, but it's a wave, and waves crest and fall. By simply not acting for 4 seconds, you let the worst of the curve pass under you instead of through you. Third, and this is the deep one, every time you pause and the reward does not follow, you are running the loop in reverse. You're depositing a repetition into the account of refusal instead of surrender. You are starving the desire. Epictetus put it directly. Every habit and capability is confirmed and grows by its corresponding actions, and if you would not have a thing inflamed within you, do not give it the food to grow. The 4-second pause is how you stop feeding it. Not with a dramatic act of war, but with a small, deliberate withholding, repeated. Here's how it runs in practice. The craving rises. You feel the familiar pull toward the phone, the drink, the screen. You catch it. And instead of reaching, you stop. 1, you breathe, and you name it. This is a craving, not a command. 2. You feel where it lives in the body, the tightness, the restlessness, and you let it be there. 3. You remember that you do not have to act on a sensation, that the wanting is allowed to exist without being obeyed. 4. You choose, consciously, from inside the gap rather than below it. And 9 times out of 10, by the 4th second, the grip has loosened just enough that the choice is actually yours again. Notice what this is not. It is not suppression. It is not pretending you don't want the thing. The honesty is the point. You fully admit the craving is there and is strong, and then you simply decline to let its strength make the decision. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The craving is the obstacle. The pause converts it into the exact moment you practice being free. Now the reframe that makes this sustainable, because a technique you resent won't survive contact with a hard week. Most people experience a craving as a threat, an ambush, a sign that something is wrong with them. So every urge becomes a small crisis, and a life full of urges becomes exhausting. But once you understand the loop, the craving becomes something else entirely. It becomes a rep. Think about how anyone builds real strength. Not by avoiding resistance, but by meeting it, deliberately, again and again. The boxer doesn't curse the heavy bag for being heavy. The runner doesn't resent the hill. The resistance is the entire point. It's the only thing that builds the capacity. Your cravings are the resistance. Each one is an offered repetition in the discipline of staying composed under pressure. And here is the shift that changes a person. You start to almost welcome them, not because you enjoy the discomfort, but because you understand what each one is for. The Stoics trained this way on purpose. They called the practice ascesis, deliberate exercise of the will, treating hardship as the gym rather than the enemy. Seneca would periodically live on the plainest food and the roughest conditions, not because he had to, but to rehearse going without, so that the fear of losing comfort lost its power over him. He was doing reps. He was pausing in the gap before he needed to, so that when real pressure came, the muscle was already built. You are doing the same thing every time a craving rises, and you hold your 4 seconds. You are not just resisting one urge. You are building the general capacity to stay effective when something inside you is demanding that you don't. And that capacity transfers. This is what people miss when they think this is just about quitting some small bad habit. The person who can pause before the phone is the same person who can pause before the angry email, before the panicked decision, before the reactive word in the meeting that costs them. The 4-second gap is one skill wearing different clothes. You practice it on the craving because the craving shows up 10 times a day and gives you 10 free repetitions. The drink, the snack, the scroll. These are not your problems. They are your training equipment. There's a quiet dignity that comes from this. You stop seeing yourself as someone at war with your own appetites, someone who has to be policed and restrained. You start seeing yourself as someone in training. The urge arrives, and instead of dread, there's almost a small recognition. Ah, here's another one. Another 4 seconds. Another rep. And slowly, without any single dramatic moment, the cravings that used to run your life get quieter because you stopped feeding them and started using them. So let's bring it down to what you actually carry out of here. The craving is not your enemy, and it is not your master. It's weather. It arrives. It spikes. And if you do nothing, it passes. The reason it's been beating you is not weakness. It's timing. You've been trying to win at the peak, when the decision has already been made beneath you. And every time you've lost, you didn't just lapse. You strengthened the loop and trained the very thing defeating you. But that loop runs both ways. The 4-second pause is how you reverse it. When the urge appears, you don't fight and you don't obey. You stop, you breathe, you name it as a craving, not a command. You feel it without feeding it. And you choose from inside the gap instead of below it. 4 seconds, long enough to outlast the spike, long enough to pry the urge apart from the action, long enough to make the choice yours again. And every pause is a rep, a small, deliberate withholding that starves the desire a little more, while building the one capacity that carries into everything that matters under pressure. Breaking a craving was never a single heroic act of willpower. It's the gradual weakening of desire through repeated, quiet refusal. Done in the gap, 4 seconds at a time. Epictetus said it plainly. It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The craving says now. The pause lets you answer. So the next time the urge rises, and it will, probably within the hour, don't try to want it less. Don't wait to feel strong. Just find the gap and hold it open for 4 seconds. That gap is not a small thing. That gap is where you actually live.